Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to some of y'all and peace out to the rest of you. Hit the share button because the message is more important than the messenger. Let me start by thanking Attorney Dennis Spurling for attempting to open up Fifi's eyes. Now, I know her real name. And as a matter of fact, I think I matched her by voice to another account with another avatar. And if that is the case, then it appears that at least a long time ago, there was something that would have driven men away from her. I don't know what's going on now. Men of her own conservative community would have been driven away. Now, as for whatever is going on now, in this case, whatever the case is now, I don't know. And I'm not asking. But you try to talk some sense into her. I'll start by advising you, Attorney Spurling. She said one thing that is not befitting of a Muslim man or woman to say. I'm not going to listen to nobody else. I'm just going to do what I want. That's not befitting of us. There has to be a very compelling moral reason for us to say this regarding other people. Okay, other people have to be involved in worship of multiple gods or oppressing someone or something that's just clearly immoral. For us to say we don't care about others, we're going to do what we want to do, and even then what we want to do has to be moral. And that tells me right there that something's going wrong. She's been around sisters too long. Now I'm going to address you, Ms. Fifi. As a Muslim, everything that I'm going to say is not based on hatred. It is actually based on well wishes for you. And I'm going to do all I can to be fair and factor in what I don't know and what I do know, so that you have all the information that you need to make the right decision yourself. This man, if you went in for simple assault, and I'm not an attorney, but I believe that Attorney Spurling told you this. If this man went in to the penitentiary for a simple assault, even if he was attacked, chances are this is not his first rodeo. If this man has been in and out of jail before, and he was Muslim when he was going in and out of jail, that's a problem. There are some nigglims out there. They're supposed to be Muslims, but they keep practicing niglam till they wind up in prison so long they start practicing Prislam. And that's where you try to be Muslim, and you may actually be a Muslim by definition, but you twist so many things around to suit your dysfunction that it becomes something else. If this man was already Muslim out in them streets, there's nothing you can do. If he became Muslim during this last stay in the penitentiary, that's different. But even then, in order to really know that he's taking it seriously and that he actually plans on turning his life around and becoming a square, because that's what the effort's going to take, that Malcolm X standard, becoming a square, then you're going to need a man from your family to vet him. That's how it works in our religion for a reason. Now, if it ain't your dad because your dad's a racist, then you don't have to obey your father, because race is not a valid reason, especially because a man is from an oppressed race. That's not a valid reason to turn him down for marriage. You can choose your own preference, but that's not a valid reason for your dad to say he's no good. His criminal record could be. His race, absolutely not. I understand that you probably refuse to side with white supremacy, in any way, form, or fashion. And that is commendable. From a Muslim to another, that's commendable. I started my channel to go against Muslims that went along with white supremacy and preaching Islam at the same time. I get it. I got nothing but smoke for Arabs, Pakistanis, Indians, and Afghans who side with white supremacy in any way, form, or fashion while preaching Islam. I started my channel for that years ago. I now wound up in another direction. One of the first men that I ever spoke up to defend recently has jumped in on Kevin Samuels like Kevin is part of the problem, when in fact Kevin has preached things that are Islamically compatible, like polygyny, family, marriage, but not taking any crap off of ladies either, and not always giving men the short end of the stick every time there's a coupling up in a matchup. And a man, a Muslim imam, I spoke up to defend almost 7 years ago. No, I'm sorry, almost 5 years ago. Turned around and decided to correct Kevin, when the fact is that Kevin is preaching things relevant to Muslims, and imams were not doing this, and they left that. They let a non-Muslim beat us to the punch again, so I get it. I understand where your heart is. If black men really are your preference, you must do a self-assessment, not to see why, but to see what kind of black man you're most compatible with, because just like Afghans are not a monolith and there's no one language called Afghan, the same thing holds true for black men. We're not a monolith. There are attorneys like Mr. Spurling. There are guys with whom he grew up that became gangbangers, lifers in prison, or cadavers. There are others with whom he grew up that became physicians. There are those with whom he grew up that went in all kinds of directions. I didn't grow up with those roughneck dudes. I met some of them when I was in high school. I met actually some in middle school that were not quite roughnecks at that age, but then by the time we got to high school, they were thugged out. Met 22-year-olds that were freshmen in high school with me. They were 22, 8 years older than me. Supposed to be graduating college at this point. They were in classes with me and had kids and were bullies, picking on 14 and 15-year-old freshmen. I'm talking about the white ones. I didn't grow up with them. I saw them become what they were. So we're not a monolith. My neighborhood was a nice one, Huxtable. Not like where Bill Cosby would live, but like where Cliff Huxtable would live, his character. That's kind of life I lived, and my friends did too. That's how we came up. We got a Facebook group from the neighborhood. We miss it, and we know that we cannot continue this, and we're not able to pass this on to our children. That being said, I'm saying this because whatever it is that you got going on that would make Afghan men look at you and say, never mind, whatever it might be, and I'm not saying this to knock you, I'm saying this just so that you can take these things into account, unless, of course, they're not there. And if they're not there, you can ignore this portion. Unless Afghan men think that these things are there when they're really not, then you still have to factor them in. But understand that whatever might make, well, if for whatever reason Afghan men don't want you, black men are wising up. And black men who may find out that Afghan men simply did not want you, these same black men are going to look and say, well, then I don't either. You may have been my type otherwise, but I do not get with someone that's not black simply because their own people don't want them. I'm not a trash dump. That's what black men are beginning to say. The black men who will not say this are the problem. You won't want them anyway in the long run. If this man that is incarcerated turned his life around, this last time that he's been in prison, you're still going to have to find a male relative. And if it's not going to be your dad, fine, you got to find one that's not racist, but they will assess him based on what he's supposed to as a Muslim. But you still got to find that, and you got to be ready to accept that male relative's assessment. You cannot go into this on your own like you're trying to do. And if that man incarcerated does not want a male relative to assess him and vet him and give some sort of approval, then trust me, you don't want that man behind bars. And that's how you can tell. Also understand this, man. He may be coming out of prison. Maybe it's parole, maybe it's probation. Maybe he's done his sentence and he's off on a clean slate, whatever the case is. Maybe he gets out, just early release, or maybe if it's parole or probation, then he's not fully free when he gets out. He's going to have a hard time in any case finding a job. That's going to be difficult. If he's out on parole or probation, his parole or probation officer can send him back to prison and skip jail straight to prison. But if he is, in fact, out and he's finished his sentence, then you got to keep in mind, even then, he's going to have a hard time finding a job and in keeping one. It's hard enough when a black man has no criminal record. That's not necessarily black men's fault. But when a black man has a felony on his record, it becomes darn near impossible. You are going to have to be the one to support him. And I mean financially. You may not be ready for that, but you will have to do it. Sorry. I wish it wasn't the case, but you will. Now, there is something else there is something else here. If you were not seen as a bad catch to Afghan men, then you can still have a black man if you want. And you can have a black man that is more in line with what you deserve. If you're not bringing some kind of dead weight that's going to hold a man back in life, or something that's just a bad deal for him, then you don't deserve to accept one yourself. And if your preference is black men, there are black men that are attorneys. There are black men that are physicians. There are black men that are teachers. There are black men that are train operators. There are black men that are carpenters, electricians. There are black men in various professions. If you are not some sort of total wash-up amongst your own people, for whatever reason, then you can get a black man who, even if he doesn't make a lot of money, he still ain't going to prison and jail. They got quiet black men that work jobs, and if you're not demanding a lot of money, and it's good if you don't, because money is one of those things that gets up and runs, that's true. And greed for that can cause problems too. But if you're to a point where that's not really what's a priority for you, that's great. Here's the thing though, you still want to avoid a man that goes in and out of captivity. You want to avoid a man that's in that street life, or even has traces in that street life that can get him thrown back into captivity. You want to avoid that. That's important. Absolutely important. You want to quiet brothers? I mean, what I'm saying is, liking black men does not mean that you have to go, and even if you want to rebel against your dad because he's a racist, and because he was too hard on mom. If that is the case, getting a brother doesn't mean you got to go and get the most negatively stereotypical black man out there. You may say, yeah, but this guy's Muslim, that's fine. If he was Muslim when he was out there in them streets, that's bad though. You can find a black Muslim. That's possible. See, you can find a black Muslim that ain't in them streets, ain't in and out of captivity, in prison. There were also electricians, carpenters, plumbers, truck drivers, or teachers, or attorneys, or physicians. Some of them are medium earners, some are low earners, some are high earners, but they're not in and out of captivity, and they ain't in them streets. And they live quiet lives. And they'll say their prayers and they'll put their forehead to the ground for the Lord. The required number of times in a day, they will do these things, and guess what else? They ain't in and out of prison. They ain't in them streets. They're not one fight or one argument away from another prison sentence. This is important. They're not the walking negative stereotype. If you really want to do your dad a solid and teach him a lesson, don't get with the stereotype. Get with the one that's not a stereotype. They're out there. Unless, of course, there's a reason, there's something so bad you've done in the past that you feel you deserve it. And you may have, and I don't know about it. And if that is the case, I'll shut up and stand silent. If it's not, then you're going to have to shift your focus. And if you really think that this guy, because he recently became Muslim and he's turning his life around, if you really think that that's the case, then get a male relative to vet him. If he has a problem with that, then that means he didn't really turn it around. And that's how you'll know. So without me telling you exactly what decision to make, I'm telling you how you can know what decision to make. Because I can tell you, the way I heard you with Attorney Spurling, you sounded like someone that doesn't listen. And that's exactly what the problem is with our women, and that's why we're leaving them. They don't listen. They always got lip. Not hatred, not animosity all the time, just lip. My way, I'm gonna do what I want. What about when it's wrong? You still gonna do what you want? And their answer is a resounding, "Your father can right." Because they can't stand to listen to us. Understand, we are no longer the men to go to simply because you may not feel like listening to men. We aren't those dudes. We're waking up. And I'll take this man, if I meet him and he's actually turning his life around, I will take him and I'll wake him up. If I, your Muslim brother, had a chance to sit with this gentleman and he's like, yeah, man, when I get out, I'm gonna get married to this fine sister from elsewhere, I would say, all right, man. Well, listen, describe her. This is what I would tell him. So in a nutshell, if there's any non-good reason, if there's any bad reason you have for trying to get with this man, and I caught it, I would pull his coattail and I would say, bruh, this is why she's with you. And it ain't good. And if he didn't know and I knew this would ruin you all's chances, but you were with him for a bad reason, I would ruin those chances. But what I'm saying to you now may ruin his chances, but it could be because he's with you for a bad reason. And if he's not, then he will want you to send a male relative to vet him. I hope that this helps. Thank you for listening. Until next time, ma'am. Salam alaikum.